On the morning of the 14th of October, 1066, two armies faced one another on a ridge in southern England. At the top stood King Harold Godwinson behind a dense wall of shields. Below waited William, Duke of Normandy, with archers, infantry and cavalry brought across the channel. Before darkness fell, one king would be dead, one invasion would survive, and England would begin to change forever. But the story of Hastings did not begin at Hastings. 9 months earlier, Edward the Confessor died without a direct heir. His death opened a question that could no longer be postponed: who should rule England? Harold Godwinson was the kingdom's most powerful nobleman, with military experience and the support of many leading men. The day after Edward died, Harold was crowned king. Across the Channel, William of Normandy saw the moment differently. William claimed that Edward had promised him the English throne. Norman sources also said Harold had sworn an oath supporting William's succession. Its exact meaning and circumstances remain disputed. What mattered was that William believed Harold had taken a crown that should have been his. A third claimant made the crisis even more dangerous. Harold Hardrada, King of Norway, advanced a separate claim through an older Scandinavian succession argument. He was joined by Tostig Godwinson, Harold's exiled brother. England had one crowned king while two foreign rulers prepared to challenge him. Harold knew William was preparing an invasion. Through the summer he kept men and ships ready along the southern coast. But armies could not remain mobilized forever. Supplies were consumed, the expected Norman attack did not come, and the coastal force eventually dispersed. Then the first invasion struck from the opposite direction. Hardrada and Tostig sailed into northern England. On the 20th of September their army defeated the forces of Earls Edwin and Morcar at Fulford, near York. The northern defense had been broken, and Harold could no longer remain in the south waiting for William. He moved north with remarkable speed. 5 days later, Harold's army reached the Norwegian force at Stamford Bridge. The fighting was brutal. Hardrada was killed. Tostig was killed. By the end of the day, the Norwegian invasion had effectively collapsed. For Harold, it was a major victory. Then the strategic situation changed again. While Harold was still in the north, William's fleet was finally moving. The invasion had required months of preparation. Ships carried soldiers, supplies and horses. Weather delayed the crossing, but at the end of September the opportunity arrived. William crossed the Channel and landed at Pevensey in Sussex. This was not a raiding party. The Normans unloaded horses and equipment, established fortified positions and moved toward Hastings. William had brought an expeditionary army designed not simply to attack England, but to remain there. News of the landing reached Harold in the north. The king turned around. His movement south is often reduced to a story of an exhausted army marching from one battle to another. The reality was more complicated. Some veterans had fought in the northern campaign, but additional forces joined Harold as he moved south, and he paused in London while gathering more men. He faced a difficult choice. Waiting could bring reinforcements and rest. But every additional day allowed William to strengthen his position and devastate more of Sussex. Harold chose to move. By the middle of October, the two armies were close. Their military systems were very different. Harold's army fought overwhelmingly on foot. At its core were professional housecarls, many protected by mail and armed with spears, swords and formidable two-handed axes. Around them stood men raised through England's local military system. Their greatest battlefield strength was cohesion. William's army offered more tactical options. Missile troops could attack from a distance. Infantry could close with the English line. Mounted warriors could move rapidly and exploit weaknesses. He simply had more ways to apply pressure. Harold chose strong ground. His army formed along a ridge near Hastings, forcing the Normans to attack uphill. The English stood in a dense defensive formation, the shield wall. That created the central problem of the battle. William had to break the wall. Harold had to keep it together. The fighting began in the morning. Norman missile troops opened the battle, followed by attacks from infantry and cavalry. Arrows struck shields and men. Infantry climbed the slope. Horsemen searched for openings. The English line held. The ridge reduced the power of the Norman attack. A compact body of infantry was difficult for cavalry to penetrate, especially uphill. English axes and spears were dangerous at close range. The Normans had flexibility, but every attack still ended against the same defensive wall. For a time, the invasion itself may have been in danger. On the Norman left, forces associated with the Breton contingent began to retreat. Confusion spread, and a rumor circulated that William had been killed. Such a rumor could destroy an army's morale. William reportedly showed his troops that he was still alive. The Norman line stabilized. Then the English position revealed its weakness. Some English fighters pursued the retreating enemy downhill. But Harold's strength depended on his men remaining together. Once groups left the ridge, they lost the protection of the wall. Norman mounted troops could turn, isolate them and attack on open ground. Every group drawn away from the ridge weakened the system that had resisted William for hours. Later withdrawals appear to have been exploited, and perhaps deliberately repeated, to tempt more English fighters into pursuit. The exact number and design of these maneuvers cannot be reconstructed with certainty. But their effect was to turn the battle from a frontal assault into a struggle to pull the English formation apart. Still, the English did not collapse quickly. Hastings lasted for hours, unusually long for a medieval battle. Norman infantry continued to attack. Cavalry pressed the line. Missile fire added to the pressure. Men and horses fell. Shields broke. Formations became thinner. Fatigue accumulated on both sides. This was not a victory produced by one glorious charge. It was ground down across a long afternoon. As the English line lost men and cohesion, the advantages of its position weakened. Harold remained near the center of the defense with his household troops and royal standard. William, mounted and mobile, could respond across different parts of his army. Late in the battle, pressure around Harold's position became overwhelming. Exactly how the English king died remains uncertain. The Bayeux tapestry has long been interpreted as showing an arrow striking his face, while other traditions describe him being cut down in the final fighting. The precise manner of his death cannot be proved. What is certain is that Harold fell. With the king dead, the English army lost its political center and a crucial part of its command. Harold's household warriors continued to resist, but organized defense began to fragment. The ridge that had held for most of the day was finally lost. By nightfall William controlled the battlefield. But Hastings had not yet given him England. English leaders briefly looked to Edgar Atheling as another king, and London did not simply surrender. William still had to turn victory into political submission. He advanced through southern England, applying pressure and receiving the submission of important leaders. On Christmas Day 1066, William was crowned king at Westminster. The invasion had succeeded. The conquest was still not complete. Resistance continued for years. Norman rule had to be imposed and defended across the kingdom. Castles became one of its most visible instruments, allowing relatively small forces to dominate routes, towns and surrounding territories. A battlefield victory was becoming a permanent system of control. The social consequences were deeper still. Over the following years, much of England's old landholding aristocracy was replaced by Norman and other continental lords. Estates changed hands on an extraordinary scale. Hastings had changed the crown at the top, but Conquest transformed who possessed land, power and local authority. The church changed as well. Senior English churchmen were increasingly replaced by Norman and continental clergy. Great churches, abbeys and cathedrals were rebuilt on a new scale, reshaping the kingdom's appearance. Yet Norman England was not created by erasing Anglo-Saxon England. William and his successors preserved and used important English institutions, including shires, sheriffs and established systems of royal administration and taxation. The conquerors replaced much of the elite while inheriting one of the most organized kingdoms in Western Europe. Language followed the same pattern of change and continuity. Norman French became the language of much of the ruling class. Latin remained central to church and administration. English survived among the wider population. Over generations, contact between these languages helped reshape English vocabulary and expression. The conquest also pulled the English monarchy more deeply into continental politics, with consequences that would endure for centuries. 2 decades after Hastings, the Domesday Survey recorded land, ownership, resources and obligations across much of the kingdom. It was not created on the battlefield, but it revealed how profoundly conquest had reordered power. That is why Hastings cannot be understood as only a contest between knights and a shield wall. It was the decisive battle inside a much larger succession war. Harold did not lose because England was weak. William did not win because victory was inevitable. A disputed crown, 2 invasions, forced marches, maritime logistics, terrain, different military systems, battlefield adaptation, attrition and the death of a king all combined on one October day. Hastings lasted only hours. Norman conquest took years. But on that ridge in Sussex, the old balance of power was broken. England was not erased. It was transformed. Its ruling elite, its landscape, its continental connections and even the future development of its language would carry the consequences for centuries. The battle ended at Hastings. The England it created was only beginning.
South comes the tide. England stands with war on either side. Ride north, turn south, no rest, no time, the man, the land, the line must hold. Hold the ridge, hold the line, shield by shield, side by side.